Wow. What an audience. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks. Some of you may see me on Fox this morning. In fact, one of the ladies I was just talking to said, well, where'd you do that from? I said, I just live 20 miles north. I have a studio in my house. It's just a TV in the background. It's a TV. It's actually a video of we took down in Palm Beach. You're just watching a movie in the background. It's in my office. If you listen real close on Fox sometimes for hits, you'll hear some like gurgling in the back. That's usually my 6-year-old running around outside. No, I'm serious. Like, yeah, that's my office, and it's a really small office. I don't live like liberals in a 5,000 square foot mansion. So once in a blue moon, you can hear my kids running around. So that happened. I made it down here. Sorry, I didn't tell everybody I was here. When we went to the front desk, I got caught up in a conversation with Sebastian Gorka and Louis Gohmert, and we're all chatty Cathy. So that just went on forever. I forgot to tell everyone that I actually showed up. So I am here. We made it. I'm great. Thanks to everyone who's already bought the book in advance. I really appreciate it. That's what I want to talk about today, folks, because it's been about 1.5 years now of my life. I've written 4 books, but this one by far was the most tedious to put together. I had to have 2 co-authors actually help me out. And the reason I wrote the book, this whole spying scandal, this debacle, this atrocious disgrace of a scandal that happened to our president. You know, a lot of cops, federal agents in the room, anyone have experience in law enforcement? Yeah, a couple, raise your hand. If I'm wrong, call me out on this, but when I was a cop and then a Secret Service agent, if you have even an ounce of empathy for human beings, which most of you in this room have more than an ounce, you have a whole lot, you'll arrest a lot of bad people for a lot of really bad things. But one of the things that impacted me so deeply in my life, I'm not going to say the guy's name for obvious reasons, but let's call him John Doe. You know, we hit a door at about 6 o'clock in the morning to arrest this guy in a credit card fraud scheme, and it was ugly. I mean, it had been hundreds of thousands of dollars. When you're a federal agent, you don't get to arrest people for like $5 petty crimes or anything like that. They'll throw you right out of there. It was a serious crime. We arrested the guy, and I remember after working on this case for 6 months, there was this sense of accomplishment tempered immediately by this awful feeling in my gut. It's 7 o'clock in the morning, you arrest him, and you don't anticipate the human side of it. Well, what happened? The guy's young kids ran out. That's their dad. He actually wasn't the worst guy in the world. He was actually a good father to his kids, and they're watching their father in handcuffs. And the wife is crying, their life is over. Now, the guy was a bad guy, don't get me wrong. But again, we're all human beings, and I've got to tell you that, almost scarred me for the rest of my time. I kept thinking to myself, I couldn't get that image out of my head. What bothers me about that and how that ties to this Spygate thing and why this whole thing has consumed the last 1.5 years of my life is that guy was an actual bad guy. Imagine if you find out you're the President of the United States, all you did was win an election, and you find out the massive machinery of the federal government with the ability to slap bracelets on you in the form of handcuffs, take your life and your freedom, was turned against you. Folks, this happened. This is the biggest scandal of our generation. There's no close second. This makes Watergate look like Romper Room. Now, I only have about 20 minutes or so to get through this. This is usually about a 45-minute speech. I just gave it in California. But I promise you, there wasn't one person falling asleep the entire time. I'm going to walk you through what happened. It's all in the book, by the way, in great detail. And what we did in the book, if you choose to buy it or not, it's totally up to you. I'm happy to sign them. I won't leave until I sign every one of them. But read the footnotes. We deliberately did not use footnotes from right-leaning resources. I used CNN, the Washington Post, the New York Times, because anyone who tells you, oh, this didn't happen, just go to the footnotes and say, did you read this article? It happened, folks. The President of the United States had the intelligence community and the law enforcement community of the United States at the highest levels weaponized against him. Now, I like to break it down simply into how they did this. They had plan A, plan B, and plan C. And the joke of the whole thing, and when I say joke, I don't mean funny, I mean a tragic joke, is it wasn't known as plan A, plan B, and plan C. You know why? They thought plan A was just fine, so it was just the plan. When Plan A failed, they had to move on to Plan B and then Plan C, which is the cleanup operation. Here's how this whole thing starts against Donald Trump. During the election, the Obama administration, which had done whatever it wants because the media is lost in this country, folks. There's no media. Forget it. That's dead and buried. The media's done. They don't do journalism anymore. It's activism, nothing more, right? The Obama administration had grown comfortable with the idea of weaponizing government against their political enemies. It had happened over and over again. We had the IRS scandal, we had the AP phone records scandal, the Jim Rosen Fox News scandal, and I ask you this, what happened to any of the people involved? Anyone? Yeah, the answer is nothing. I have to do zeros like this now, because I used to do zeros like this, but I found out through the liberal media that somehow this means like a white power symbol now or something. I thought it meant okay or zero, but the media says, no, I'm serious, like these idiots in the media will tell you, so now I do zeros like that because I'm like afraid of some media idiot. These people are crazy. The Obama administration had gotten completely comfortable with the idea of abusing government for their political means. So what happens? This plan gets hatched, and I'm going to be candid with you. Where exactly it's hatched, nobody is yet sure of to this day. Matter of fact, if you're familiar with my commentary on Fox, I say often one of the great mysteries of this case is what's paragraph 1? Paragraph 1, what do I mean by that? When I was a federal agent, when you arrest someone, you have to do what's called an MR, a memorandum report. Paragraph 1 of that MR is always how the case started. I got a call from Jane Doe, bank fraud investigator, said this credit card number was stolen on April 14, 2015. I made a few calls, and the next thing you know, it's an 80-page report about this massive scheme. Paragraph 1, though, always lays it out. Always. Do you know to this day we still have no idea what paragraph 1, the why they started to spy on the Trump team was? Now, I get it. It was for political. I get that. But at some point, somebody, you have to understand, folks, had to put down on paper a semi-legitimate reason to start the most massive spying operation in a political campaign in U.S. history. Do you know nobody to this day will tell you what that is? I know what it is. So the first plan they do to hit the Trump team, folks, is they learn to manipulate these about queries in the NSA database. The NSA has a database of a whole boatload of information, metadata, texts, that kind of stuff. How it works is too complicated in the time I have, but what you can do is you can query that NSA system and you can get a whole lot of information. Well, what happens? This is plan A. This is how they're going to get the information. I hope, if I'm not following, please stop me, because this is important. The Obama administration figures out that through unmasking, in other words, wiretapping people, pretending they're targeting foreigners, and then querying information in this database, that they can get all the political opposition research in the world that they need against the Trump team. It's beautiful. No one's going to call them out. The media is on their side, right? But there's a good guy in this. There's a white hat. Somebody in the government sniffs this thing out. That's why I tell you, this wasn't plan A, this was the plan. They were going to unmask people, wiretap people, and they were going to query this NSA database and get all the information they needed about the Trump team. But somebody smells a problem, and he's not having it. And he's the white hat, he's the good guy in this story. And it's Mike Rogers of the NSA. Mike Rogers of the NSA senses that there's something wrong about these about queries. In other words, who's tapping into the database here and making political queries? Now, folks, some of you, I don't know your politics. I assume most of you are conservative, libertarian, or Republican, but that's fine either way. If you doubt any of what I'm telling you, just Google the FISA Intelligence Surveillance Court, their report on about queries. Because Mike Rogers goes to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court and says, Houston, we got a problem. These queries are supposed to follow very specific guidelines about terrorism, and all these metrics have to be, you can't just spy on Americans in the database. The FISA court looks into it, comes back with a report that was released in March of 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, that is devastating. If you haven't read it, you were doing yourself a great disservice. Page 80 specifically is horrifying. Apparently, the NSA database was being queried by private contractors working with the FBI. These were not even government officials. People within the government were using private contractors to query information they had no judicial or legal authority whatsoever to look at. Rogers smells a rat. People panic in the government. Now, conveniently, what happens right after the election? I'm going to put these pieces together and things will start to make sense. Donald Trump's elected. He's the president-elect, right? 10 days after the election, Rogers, who knows this has been going on the whole time, these unmaskings, the tapping of the... Now does the Donald Trump tweet, they tapped Trump Tower, or then how does it make sense? He got the wording wrong. He didn't understand exactly how it worked, but the idea was not wrong. Donald Trump's not stupid, trust me. Guy got elected president, earned $1 billion. By the way, I love how these journalists criticize him. The guy's making $25,000 a year writing clickbait pieces for BuzzFeed. Like, Donald Trump's an idiot. Hard pass, brother. Like, well, the guy just won he runs for office the first time and he becomes the president. But let me listen to Joey Bag of Donuts at BuzzFeed. You're right, you've got this. It's like, so about 10 days after the election, Donald Trump, someone goes up to visit Donald Trump in Trump Tower. Who visits him? Mike Rogers. But Rogers doesn't tell anyone. This is going to trip you out totally. He doesn't tell anybody in the White House he's going up there. He visits Trump in Trump Tower, conveniently 10 days after the election, which from my experience in the Secret Service is just enough time for them to go up to Trump Tower, WACA, the White House Communications Agency, for the president-elect, and set up a SCIF where they can talk privately, a sensitive compartmentalized information facility. In other words, a place where no one can listen in. Rogers gives it about 10 days, goes up there, has this big meeting with Donald Trump, and what happens the very next day? Donald Trump evacuates Trump Tower and goes to Bedminster, New Jersey to never return for another meeting. You think that was a coinky-dink? Like he did that by accident? Oh, let's just go up to Bedminster. I got nothing else to do. Now, again, this is all in the book in intricate detail. The greatest spy story ever told, except the fact that it actually happened, and it happened against you. Rogers has this meeting. Trump evacuates Trump Tower. The very next day, the Obama administration comes out and calls for somebody to be fired. Who's that somebody? Mike Rogers. And they start blaming it on things like drone strikes and other stuff. Like, really? Could you be any more obvious? The Obama administration knows Rogers is the good guy and fills Trump in on this entire debacle. He probably goes up there and says, brother, they're spying on you, like right now. He doesn't know, but now he does. So he leaves. All of a sudden, people start resigning from the federal government after that. You know who also resigns? Bob Hannigan. Now, who's Bob Hannigan? Bob Hannigan is the head of the GCHQ, which is the British NSA. Well, why do you think the head of the British NSA would resign right after that Rogers meeting, right after Trump finds out about this massive spying operation? I'm going to tell you why right now. I'm not taking a selfie of you. I'm not taking a selfie of myself. I'm going to read to you a headline. This is from CNN. See it right there. I didn't Photoshop this. April 14th, 2017. Remember who Bob Hannigan is. He's the head of the British NSA. British intelligence passed Trump associates' communications with Russians on to U.S. counterparts. You think I'm making this up? That's CNN. I didn't write it. They wrote that. So not only is the United States government in Plan A weaponizing its intelligence community to listen in and computer search the Trump team to hurt them during the campaign for political oppo, they're working with the British and the Australians to pass information about the Trump team onto the Obama administration. Don't take it from me. Take it from CNN. They find out about this. Now, this thing breaks down about halfway through. They move on to Plan B. Sorry, there's a lot more to Plan A, but in the interest of time, I want to get through this because the cleanup operation is important. They move on to Plan B. What's Plan B? They realize Rogers is onto them. They're like, hey, folks, we better ease up on the unmasking and the tapping into the database. People are getting caught. This is probably not good. We're leaving a massive paper trail. And what if we lose, right? They move on to Plan B. Plan B is Crossfire Hurricane. They say, well, listen, if we can't spy on them illegally, let's just spy on them legally. We have this beautiful thing called the FISA court, where we can walk into the FISA court, we can get a warrant on somebody, and when you get a warrant on somebody in the Trump team, they have this beautiful thing for the Obama administration called the two-hop rule. Well, it's for everyone, not just for Obama. Meaning, if I spy on you, and you're a member of the Trump team, I can hop to everybody you emailed, and then everybody they emailed. So basically, all I need to do is get a FISA warrant on the guy cleaning the floors in Trump Tower, and I've got everyone. Because if he emailed his boss and his boss emailed Don Jr., I get everybody. Beautiful, right? Not really. Because they were stupid. They were dumb. And they screwed up. The problem with the FISA court, unlike the unmaskings and the tapping into the database, is they had to produce actual evidence in front of a judge. There was a judge in a FISA court that needed evidence that the Trump team was working on behalf of a foreign power, but critically doing it in violation of at least one U.S. law. Folks, they had nothing. They had zero. Do you understand they, to this day, have absolutely zero? Zero. Remember, don't do it one hand. It's a big mistake. Media people, you'll be a white power person after that. You always do it that way. They had zero evidence at all. The funny thing, I'm only half kidding. That's how worried I am about the media. They're so crazy these days, right? They had nothing on collusion. Nothing. Zero. So what does the FBI and the State Department and the DOJ do? They say, well, we don't really have any evidence. Let's just make it up. We've got this guy we worked with in the past, this guy Christopher Steele. Now I'm going to do this. I'm not taking a selfie again. I'm not taking a picture of you. Don't you worry. I'm going to read to you another headline. You need to write this down because this one's going to blow your mind. Any of you read the dossier? You haven't, right? Not many people have. You should. If you haven't read the dossier, don't you worry. Because the dossier was already written back on April 17th of 2007. You're like, what do you mean? I don't get it. 2017, right? No, I didn't get that wrong. It's written right here in the Wall Street Journal on April 17th, 2007. Who's the author of this critical Wall Street Journal piece? Glenn Simpson and Mary Jacoby, his wife. Glenn Simpson, the purveyor of Fusion GPS. The article is called, How Lobbyists Help Ex-Soviets Woo Washington. Folks, I dare you to take a moment and read that piece. Put it next to the dossier. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the same story. It was written 11 years ago. Glenn Simpson clearly had this information about Russian influence in Washington. He wrote 10 years ago. Read the names in the article. You know who appears in this article? Paul Manafort, all of these players. So what likely happened after Plan A collapses is they say, listen, let's go to the FISA court and do this legally, but we need evidence. We don't have evidence. Don't worry. Hillary Clinton's got a guy at Fusion GPS, says he's got a story to tell. Ladies and gentlemen, Glenn Simpson took his Wall Street Journal piece like it was a movie script, scratched out the names, put Donald Trump's name in there and said, look, do I got a story for you guys? It's all BS. The whole dossier is crap. Read the article. It's a movie script they recycled. It's a fairy tale. It's an Aesop's fable. It's made up. It's a scam. There is not a scintilla of evidence that it's true. Now, the big question on Plan B till I move to the mop-up operation, Plan C. Now they're in trouble. They're in a lot of trouble because they realize the dossier in and of itself is crap. And a lot of people at the Bureau know it. They need to buttress it with some stuff to make it a little harder. Now's where the Michael Cohen story comes in, Trump's lawyer. In the dossier is a very specific allegation, right? That Michael Cohen, Trump's lawyer, went over to Prague to set up this whole information exchange with the Russians, right? Well, what's the problem? Michael Cohen had never been to Prague, and his passport proved it. Where do you think they got that name, Michael Cohen? You're darn right. They probably were in that NSA database looking up a Michael Cohen and they got the wrong guy. I know there's only one Dan Bongino. I can tell you for sure there are a whole lot of Michael Cohens. Are you right? John Smith, John Brown, Cohen, these are common last names. They got the wrong Michael Cohen. So now you should be asking yourself, who the heck was Glenn Simpson dealing with in the government that gave him that name? And how did they get it? Plan B falls apart too. Plan B falls apart because something happens in November. Donald Trump wins. Nobody, I'm telling you, take it to the bank, cash this check, and spend the money. Nobody saw that coming. No one. Everybody thought Hillary Clinton was going to get in. This was all going to go away. They were going to appoint their own attorney general, probably John Brennan, and this story is never, ever to see the light of day, not in their lifetimes. But make no mistake, they know what they did. They all know what they did. Every single one of them. So they have to move on to Plan C. Plan C, I call it clean up on aisle 4. Now they're in trouble. They know they've got white hats in the government. I know one of them right now that's still in the FBI. That's unquestionably cooperating with this investigation, if you know how to read the tea leaves. And if you read the book, you'll figure out who it is. People start cooperating and talking, and now people are panicking. Now does John Brennan's meltdown after the election make sense? He's the head of the intelligence community who, again, another thing for you to Google, but it's all in the book again. Who do you think John Brennan met with right before the election at the, quote, director level as reported on by multiple media outlets? Bob Hannigan, the same guy from the British intelligence agency that quits right after Trump's election. He quits 10 days after and doesn't tell anybody about it. He says, oh, I'm leaving for family reasons. What do you mean? You related to Donald Trump? What do you mean family reasons? Family reasons, you're leaving because Donald Trump got elected. Who also quits? John Carlin. Who's John Carlin? He's the head of the Department of Justice National Security Division, the final division in the Department of Justice to put their John Hancock on the FISA warrant. He quits right after the election. Who did John Carlin work for? Now clean up on aisle 4 is going to start to make sense. Who did John Carlin work for before he got there into the DOJ? He's Bob Mueller's chief of staff. He was Bob Mueller's chief. Now does Bob Mueller make sense? Clean up aisle 4, get the mops out. Everybody realizes they're all going down. They faked a FISA warrant. They have been involved in massive unmaskings. Susan Rice, Samantha Power. They have been busted by the FISA court, tapping into the NSA database for about queries. They left a paper trail 65 miles long. Bob Mueller has to clean this whole mess up. Bob Mueller is the only, did you notice how right away they had the name? So Bob Mueller's old chief of staff, he's the cleanup guy. Listen, make no mistake. Bob Mueller's job right now is one thing and one thing only. Keep the heat on Donald Trump relentlessly for anything. Jaywalking, ripping off mattress tags, combing his hair the wrong way. Keep the attention on Trump no matter what. Because the minute the Bob Mueller thing is dissolved, all of this is going to come out, and it is hell hath no fury. Folks, they left a paper trail. They can't run from this. Mueller is brought in to get Trump impeached because they don't want any of this to see the light of day. Now, why Mueller? Mueller knows every player involved in this and has intimate connections with all of them. The guy who signs off on the BS FISA warrant, John Carlin, his old chief of staff. His chief bulldog in the case, Andy Weissman. Andrew Weissman worked with Bob Mueller. Andy Weissman was the chief prosecutor on the Enron case when Bob Mueller was the FBI director. Remember the Enron case that they screwed up royally? That's how they know each other. Andy Weissman hates Donald Trump. He's on emails congratulating Sally Yates for telling Donald Trump to go pound sand. Well, it gets better. Who else does Bob Mueller know? On Bob Mueller's Enron team, it all goes back to Enron. That same Enron team, headed by Andy Weissman, had another lead lawyer on the case. Who was it? Catherine Rumler. Who's Catherine Rumler? Obama's White House counsel, who was Obama's lawyer while all of this was going on. They know each other. Now you may say, fine, so Bob Mueller knows Obama's lawyer while this whole Spygate thing was going on. What's the big deal? You Google George Nader, Daily Beast, you can read an article today. Just popped today before we showed up. One of Bob Mueller's lead cooperators in this case, who's been selling out members of the Trump team from day one, is a guy named George Nader. Who's George Nader's lawyer? Catherine Rumler, Obama's White House counsel and Bob Mueller's buddy. The lawyer for the lead witness in this case feeding information to Mueller is Obama's White House counsel, otherwise known as the fixer. She fixed everything for them. She was involved in Benghazi, she was involved in the IRS, she was involved in the Secret Service scandal. Just Google her name, put in any one of those things, and who's the person giving the statement? Catherine Rumler. Who was also on that Enron task force? Lisa Monaco, Barack Obama's Homeland Security and Counterterrorism advisor in the White House while all of this was going on. They all know each other. Finally, and I'll take some questions. Your final piece to the cleanup on aisle 4 operation. Who else does Bob Mueller know? Who now has legislative, who has control over this, I should say, right now in the Department of Justice, right? Rod Rosenstein, right? Because Sessions had recused himself, now Whitaker's in there, which was a good appointment, right? A case happens a little while ago, the 10X case. It's around 2015 or so. It happens in Maryland. I'm familiar with it because I worked in Maryland as a Secret Service agent in Baltimore. I wasn't involved in that case at all, but I know the office well. The 10X case goes down in Maryland. The 10X case, a cooperator for the United States government paid $50,000 by the FBI, comes to the FBI with some troubling information that the Russians are helping the Iranians build their nuclear program and that there's a company helping Russians get a hold of our uranium. It's called the 10X case. It was the precursor to something you may have heard about, the Uranium One operation. The same players are involved. The case gets thrown out on a BS press release on a Friday night so nobody will pay attention. Everybody's gag ordered, and it all goes away. That the Obama administration, an FBI paid informant, admitted that we were giving the Russians uranium while they were building the Iranian nuclear program and chanting death to America. Who was the lead prosecutor on that 10X case, the precursor to Uranium One? Rod Rosenstein. And who's the FBI director? Bob Mueller. Folks, they all know each other. This is the biggest scam in American history. Folks, I beg of you, I really do. You cannot let your legislative people, your congressmen or anyone off the hook. Whatever connections you have, you need to keep the heat on this, because if these people don't go down the right way, unlike the Obama administration tried to do it to us, this will happen again. I'm telling you, what they did was such a grotesque, horrendous abuse of power. It disgusts me to this day, and I will never, ever forget that story about that guy we arrested and his crying kid that morning who wasn't going to see his dad for another year. That's a horrible thing to have to do to someone, and it's a grotesque thing to do to someone, to unleash the power of the federal government when they did nothing wrong. And Donald Trump did nothing wrong. And if you read the book, and by the way, one last thing before I get to the questions. It's not a narrative. You don't have to read it straight through. It's written like a police file. I think that's why it's been selling like crazy. You can read the last chapter first. You can go right, it's written like a police file, because the names, like I said, this is an hour-long speech I compressed into 20-plus minutes. The names never stop coming up again, ever. Oleg Deripaska, connected to Vladimir Putin, who's connected to Adam Waldman, a lobbyist who's emailing and texting Mark Warner, a Democrat on the Senate committee. Who's Waldman working for too? Christopher Steele, the guy working for Hillary. They're connected to the Russians. The people that show up at the Trump Tower meeting, Veselnitskaya with Don Jr. and Rinat Akhmetshin. Veselnitskaya works for Fusion GPS on a separate case. And Akhmetshin, the other guy, the Russian intel guy that shows up at the Trump Tower meeting, you know who his lawyer is? Edward Lieberman. You know who Lieberman's wife is? Evelyn Lieberman, Bill Clinton's old chief of staff. Read the book, folks. It's all laid out for you. So thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'll take your questions. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Sure, sure.
They love you. That was very well done. That was very well done. We have time just for a couple of quick questions, but before we get to Dr. Gorka and whoever else Mike Finch calls on, Dan has an amazing podcast. I meant to mention it in the introduction. You can go to Apple iTunes and Google for The Dan Bongino Show. And recently he had George Papadopoulos on, and he did what every good interviewer should do, not interrupt and let him talk. It's very highly recommended.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, please, I would really appreciate that. It's free. It's called The Dan Bongino Show. We're like the third biggest show in the country now. But if you want to download, it's all free. It doesn't, it's on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud. It's at Bongino.com. You just click the play button. You don't have to do anything. But check it out. And please check out that interview with Papadopoulos. It is eye-opening. He's the key figure in this whole thing. So, Mr. Gorka, question. We know this.
Dan, after the panel this morning with Joe DeGenoa and Victoria Tunzing and this presentation, we have incontrovertible proof of the biggest political law enforcement intelligence scandal since our republic was founded.
Yeah.
Is it enough for the right person to become AG? If it isn't, what more do we need for justice to be done?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I get this question a lot. As a matter of fact, that speech you and I were chatting about in California, same group I spoke in wants Sebastian. They want the A-team, I guess, right? I'm just kidding, my head's not that big. But they wanted Sebastian to come speak. And I was out there, and I get this question all the time. They say, well, what's going to happen? And I'm here to give you the bad news, unfortunately. No, I mean it. I'll give you the bad news and the good news. The bad news is nothing. I am not convinced anything's going to happen to any of these people at all. Remember, justice isn't blind in the United States. It's only blind to Democrats. Bob Menendez got off. Hillary Clinton got nothing. I mean, it's completely obvious that Hillary Clinton was involved in federal crimes. There's no doubt about it. It's just there's no will to prosecute Democrats. And the reason for that, as Sebastian knows as well as a lot of you do, is the media are full of liberals that will protect the Democrats to the end. They'll have Donald Trump potentially thrown out of office for ripping a mattress tag off. Hillary Clinton will, trade information over a private server that the Russians and Chinese were most likely reading, and nothing happens at all. Now, you say, well, what's the good news in that? I'm just being candid with you. I'm not convinced anything's going to happen at all. There's a massive paper trail on this. I think you'll get some of the non-politically connected players. I think Andy McCabe's in a lot of trouble. I actually think Jim Comey's in more trouble than you think. That's, again, if I had more time, I'd explain to you why, but he's in a world of trouble. He hid the case from Congress for 8 months. He's obligated to report quarterly. I know liberals have a tough time with math, but that means every 3 months. So Comey's in a world of trouble. But the politically connected players, Brennan, Clapper, John Carlin, Susan Rice, Samantha Power, the people who were involved, I'm not convinced anything's going to happen at all. Here's the good news. I always say I hate quotes because I think it's like for lazy men would speak when they let me quote someone else. Talk yourself. You can't figure it out. But some are really good. And, the book The Natural is just tremendous by Bernard Malibu. And in the book, he says, we all live 2 lives, the one we learn from and the one we live after that. And the only path to true happiness is through suffering. So I always bring that up in the end because, folks, it stinks. It physically and mentally wears on you knowing that we're always going to be the subject of ridiculous scrutiny by hacks in the media and police state tyrants in our government that hate us, while the other side gets a pass and gets celebrated on college campuses and they leave like heroes like Hillary Clinton. But that's your suffering. I'm not Tony Robbins. I'm not here for an inspirational speech. I'm just here to tell you that whatever your religion is, Jewish, Christian, whatever it is, the lesson from Jesus Christ and just about everyone in the Old Testament is the only path to salvation is suffering. You're here fighting for a cause you know in the end is probably not going to work out for you. But one day, you're going to be standing next to Hillary Clinton at the pearly gates of heaven or wherever you may go, and you're going to be able to say, damn it, I did the right thing and stood for what was right, while this joker scammed her entire time. Know your life meant something, and theirs are meaningless. And know one more thing. Although we may not get actual justice out of this, you will get cosmic justice. And cosmic justice is this. History eventually tells the real tale, every single time. David Dinkins was a hero in New York until Rudy Giuliani won twice and they realized how awful his administration was, and sooner or later they had to tell the truth. When the truth comes out, Hillary Clinton's legacy will be nothing more than a stain on this country. And forever in textbooks, kids are going to read her as a cautionary tale of what never to do when you get power, and that will never happen to any of you. So take that to the bank and celebrate that one. That's the justice you're going to get. Yes, ma'am.
We're going to have one last question, and then we're going to stay in the room for Ken Starr, and Dan's going to sign books outside.
Thank you. What about the FISA court judge that all of this fake information went to? Is he allowed to make any comment?
Now, there were multiple FISA court judges. Remember, there were 4 FISAs. There was an original FISA and 3 renewals. I get this question a lot. Was the FISA court judge in on it, right? Now, I can't tell you that this categorically, but my research, and if you read the book, you'll probably come to the conclusion, no, they were just lied to. Remember, there was no hearing. No hearing. You understand what I'm telling you? They walked into court and said, do you swear to this document? And they said yes, and there was no hearing. So basically, the judge is assuming that the person putting their right hand up, swearing the dossier information in there was true. It wasn't the judge's fault. So do I believe they were in on it? No. But that's where the paper trail ends. And that's why I told you, I think a lot of the unpolitically connected people are in a world of trouble. I think Peter Strzok is in trouble. I think Lisa Page is in trouble. I think Bill Priestep is already working with the federal government to take these people down. I think the law enforcement people are in trouble. But I think the politically connected people are going to get a complete pass on this. I don't think a darn thing is going to happen to Hillary Clinton. But remember, she's going to have to answer to the cosmic justice that, and in the end, to me, I know we're doing the right thing, folks. And, we fight the good fight. They fight the easy fight. So.
The media.
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, I'll tell you, you know how to change the media? Go, if you donate to any colleges or endowments, paperclip $1 to your next donation. Say you're not getting, this is my last dollar until you get some conservatives in your school of journalism. That's how you do it. All right, I'll be outside. I'll see you all if you want to find a book. So thanks for your time.